I never thought I'd be the one telling this story. I always believed I could see it coming, you know? That if something like this ever happened, I'd be able to spot the signs. But this hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like everything I thought I knew about my relationship was shattered in an instant. We'd been together for 2 years, and everything seemed fine. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. I never imagined that the one person I trusted with my heart would be the one to destroy it. But then, one evening, it all came crashing down. I walked into our apartment, expecting to find him lounging on the couch, like always. But there was something different in the air that day. A tension I couldn't explain. I called out for him, and when I walked into the living room, there he was, sitting with his back to me, phone in hand. He didn't even turn around at first. It was almost like he knew what was coming, like he was waiting for me to walk in and catch him. My stomach sank. Asked him what was going on. At first, he shrugged it off. He said, "It's nothing, just tired. You know how it is." But I wasn't buying it. Not after the past few weeks. There had been small changes. His phone always faced down, his late nights at work, the weird distance between us. He started pulling away physically, emotionally. There was this coldness in the air whenever I tried to reach out. I couldn't explain it, but I could feel it. And then it happened. He turned around, looking me straight in the eye, and said those words, cold, casual, like he had just told me what he had for lunch. I needed a real woman. It took a moment for the words to hit me, to sink in. But when they did, it felt like the ground beneath me cracked open. I froze, not knowing what to say or how to react. The audacity of it. How could someone say that to the person they were supposed to love? My heart started racing, and my mind was flooded with 1,000 thoughts. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just about cheating. It felt like an attack on who I was as a person, on everything I had believed in. I thought about all the late nights, the endless texting, the coldness that had been growing between us. It was all a lie. And in that moment, I realized something that broke me even more. I had been so blinded by love that I didn't even see what was happening right in front of me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell, to confront him, to make him feel as hurt as I did. I wanted to demand answers, to make him see what he had done. But then, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let him see me break. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of knowing how much he had hurt me. I wasn't going to beg him to explain himself. So, instead, I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I smiled. It wasn't a smile of relief or triumph. It was a sad, hollow smile. A smile that said, "I know you're not worth my time anymore." I didn't say a word. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned around, walked over to the table where my keys were, picked them up, and left. Every part of me screamed to stay, to demand answers, to break down right there. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't even know if I was leaving for good. But I knew I couldn't be in that apartment with him any longer. The betrayal was too much to bear, and I realized that I had been holding on to someone who didn't even care enough to tell me the truth. As I walked out that door, I left a piece of myself behind, but in a strange way, I also freed myself. It wasn't until I reached my car, sitting there alone in the quiet of the parking lot, that the weight of it hit me. My hands were shaking, my heart was pounding, and for the first time, I felt the overwhelming flood of emotions that I had been pushing aside for so long. But I didn't look back. The next morning, my phone blew up with 32 missed calls. 32. From him, from friends, from people who I thought were on my side. I couldn't bring myself to answer any of them. What could they possibly say? What excuse could they give for betraying me like this? It was hard to process everything, but as I stared at my phone, I realized something that gave me a strange sense of clarity. I had walked away. I had finally chosen myself over the lies, over the manipulation, and over the person who never truly deserved me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was heading in the right direction. Before all of this, everything seemed so perfect. I remember the first time we met. It felt like fate. like everything in my life had led me to him. Our first date was simple, but there was something magical about it. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing, and it felt so easy to be with him. I remember laughing more than I had in a long time. It wasn't just the good times, it was the little moments too, the lazy Sundays, making dinner together, sharing inside jokes that no one else would understand. My friends loved him. They saw the same thing I did, a good man, someone I could build a life with. And I wanted to believe that. I really did. Our circle of friends was close. We celebrated birthdays together, shared holidays, and supported each other through thick and thin. It wasn't just about the love between the two of us, it was about the family we had built around us. Our friends were always telling us how lucky we were, how perfect we seemed. They'd say things like, "You two are goals," or "I hope I find what you guys have." And I believed them. I thought we were happy. We were happy. But slowly, over time, things started to shift in a way I didn't want to admit. I ignored it at first. I didn't want to believe there could be anything wrong. After all, we had so many good memories, so much good to build on. I kept telling myself that the signs didn't mean anything. But they did. It started with the small things. The late nights. At first, I thought nothing of it. He worked long hours, and I knew his job was demanding. But then it became more frequent. And when he would come home, his eyes would be tired. But there was something else, a subtle shift in the way he looked at me. He was present, but not fully there. I brushed it off as work stress, as life happening. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then there were the texts. At first, he'd leave his phone out, face up, like he had nothing to hide. But gradually, it changed. He became more protective of it. Always locking it, always keeping it close. I'd never seen his phone as an issue before, but now, it was like a red flag waving in front of me. And when I asked him about it, he'd always laugh it off. "Why are you so paranoid? It's just work emails," he'd say. And I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust him. Then, there was the perfume. The new scent. I never forget the first time I noticed it. It wasn't his usual cologne. It was something else, something sweet. At first, I thought maybe it was just a new fragrance he had started using, but when I asked, he looked at me with that blank stare and said, "It's just the body wash, nothing special." But I knew. I knew that wasn't it. And then, the physical distance started creeping in. He stopped hugging me the way he used to. No more lingering touches, no more kisses when I'd walk into the room. It was as if I was no longer the person he wanted to be close to. I tried to ignore it at first, tried to pretend it was just stress or that we were both busy. But the coldness, the emotional distance, it was hard to ignore. But I did. I kept telling myself it was nothing. I didn't want to confront the reality, didn't want to face what my gut was telling me. So, I pushed it all down. I smiled and pretended everything was fine. Because I didn't want to believe the truth. But then, one night, everything changed. I came home early from work. I hadn't expected to. Usually, I was out late with my friends, but that day I felt like staying in. When I walked into the living room, I saw him sitting there, phone in hand, looking down at it like he didn't even hear me come in. I don't know what made me do it, but I walked over to him, and I asked, "Who are you texting?" His head snapped up, and for a moment, I saw panic in his eyes. But it was quick, too quick to be real. He tried to play it cool, but I could feel the tension in the air. "Just work," he said. "Nothing to worry about." But the way he said it didn't sound convincing. It sounded rehearsed. And then, I saw it. A message popped up on his phone. "I miss you already. Last night was amazing." My stomach dropped. I didn't have to see more. I knew what it was. The color drained from my face. It was all real. Everything my gut had been telling me was true. I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to confront him like this, not without evidence, not without hearing it from his own lips. But I couldn't stay silent anymore. The truth had already come crashing down on me. So, I asked him again. This time, my voice shook. "Who's Jay?" He froze, and for a moment, I thought maybe he would come clean. Maybe he would show some remorse. But then, he did something I didn't expect. He smirked. That smirk. That cold, arrogant smirk that sent a chill through me. And then he said it, those words that I will never forget. I needed a real woman. It was like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just the cheating that hurt. It was the way he said it, the way he looked at me. Like I wasn't enough. Like I was some kind of failure. It wasn't just a betrayal of our relationship, it was a betrayal of who I was. A personal attack. And in that moment, it wasn't just my heart breaking, it was my whole world cracking open. I could feel the anger rising inside me, and for a moment, I wanted to scream at him, to lash out, to demand answers, to make him feel everything I was feeling. But then, something unexpected happened. I looked at him, and instead of doing any of that, I just smiled. A sad smile. A smile that said everything without me having to say a word. I turned away, grabbed my keys, and walked out. Every single part of me screamed to stay, to fight, to make him understand the pain he had caused. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. And I didn't. As I walked out that door, I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. The man I loved, who I thought I knew, wasn't the person I thought he was. And for the first time, I realized that leaving was the only option. So, I left. I left him behind. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Now, I want to know, what would you have done? Would you have stayed and confronted him? Or would you have walked away too? Let me know in the comments below. The next morning, my phone didn't stop buzzing. I had 32 missed calls, most of them from him, messages flooding in, demanding I come back, explaining, begging. But there was something else in the mix. There were messages from my friends. Messages I wasn't expecting. I scrolled through them, heart racing, as I saw one from Jacob, a mutual friend we'd been close to for years. He deserves someone who gets him, the message read, followed by a couple of broken-hearted emojis. It was like a punch in the gut. Jacob. The same person who had always said how happy he was for us. The one who'd been at our house for dinner parties and game nights. The one who would always tell me how lucky I was to have someone like him. And now he was taking his side. I thought I'd misread the message, so I read it again, and it stung just as much the second time. It wasn't just Jacob. There were more messages. Friends I'd known for years, people I'd shared my life with, now suddenly telling me I needed to move on. One after another, they were all taking his side. Some told me I was too controlling, too demanding. Some even said I probably pushed him to it. Some were more subtle in their messages, but the message was clear. They thought I was the one in the wrong. It didn't make sense. It was like everyone had suddenly turned their backs on me without even asking me what happened. I was left feeling like I was crazy, like I was the one who had done something wrong. But then, it all started making sense. I opened social media, still reeling from the barrage of messages. And there it was. A post from him. It was a photo of us, or what used to be us, but the caption wasn't what I expected. Sometimes you just have to break free. Some people will never understand what it's like to be with someone who truly sees you. It sounded poetic, almost like he was trying to justify what he did. I stared at the screen, shocked. He had spun the whole thing, painted me as the bad guy, as the person who couldn't understand him, couldn't give him what he needed. I scrolled further, and there were more posts. Another one. When you're trapped in a relationship with someone who always wants to control you. Time to find my real happiness. My stomach churned. The lies were flowing faster than I could process them. But the worst part? The comments. Hundreds of them. Friends, acquaintances, even people I'd never met, everyone supporting him. Some were saying I was crazy, some claimed I was emotionally manipulative, controlling. They didn't know the half of it. They didn't know how he'd been playing them, how he had everyone convinced I was the villain in the story. They didn't know the truth. The more I read, the more I realized how deep the manipulation went. This wasn't just about him cheating on me, it was about him destroying my reputation, making me out to be the one at fault. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a random affair. This wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was all part of a pattern. I remembered all the things I'd ignored. How he'd slowly pulled away, how he'd become more secretive, how his friends would make little comments about me, about how I needed to loosen up or not be so serious. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about control. He had manipulated me, twisted the narrative so many times that I had lost track of what was real and what was a lie. And now, he was doing it all over again, but on a public scale. He was turning everyone against me. He wanted to make me look unstable, so he could continue with his life, free from the consequences of what he'd done. I wasn't just a woman he cheated on. I was the crazy ex. I was the one who had pushed him into this situation. And everyone was buying it. As I sat there, scrolling through the posts and the endless comments, I realized that this wasn't just about him and me. This was bigger. He had been doing this for years, manipulating everyone around him, making people believe whatever he wanted them to. And now, he was doing it to me. I felt something inside me snap. This wasn't just about moving on from a broken relationship. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my reputation. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I wasn't going to let him destroy me, not without a fight. So, I started digging. I dug into his social media, into everything I could find. I pulled up old messages, photos, texts. The deeper I dug, the more I uncovered. It wasn't just one affair. He'd been doing this for months, manipulating people, using them, then tossing them aside when they no longer served his purpose. It was all a game to him. He wasn't just cheating. He was controlling everything, every little detail. And now, I was part of that game. But I wasn't going to be his pawn anymore. I took screenshots of everything. The posts, the comments, the lies. I gathered everything I could. Proof of the manipulation, proof of the betrayal. I wasn't going to let him win. Now, I want to ask you, have you ever been in a situation where your reputation was torn down unfairly? What happened next? How did you deal with it? Let me know in the comments below. I was sitting there, trying to make sense of it all, trying to figure out how things went so wrong, so fast. My phone buzzed again, and I checked it out of habit, expecting another message from my ex or one of our so-called friends. But this time, it was something different. A text from Gemma, a colleague of mine who had worked with me for years, but we'd never really been that close. The message was short, but it made my heart race. We need to talk. This isn't the first time. I didn't know what to expect, but I immediately called her. What's going on? I asked, trying to steady my voice. You don't know everything, she said, her voice low. I wasn't sure how to tell you, but I can't keep quiet any longer. He's done this before. To other women. Worse, he's left them all in the dust when they were no longer useful to him. I felt a cold wave wash over me as the truth sank in. He wasn't just a guy who made a mistake or fell into a bad situation. He was a repeat offender, and I had been one of many victims of his lies. Gemma went on, telling me stories about his past relationships, ones I had never known about. How he'd manipulated other women just like me, treating them like they were the center of his world, only to discard them once he found someone new to play with. The realization hit me harder than anything else. This wasn't just a simple affair. This was a pattern. He had been weaving this web of lies, not just for months, but for years. And each woman he had been with was just another piece in his game, another one who would eventually be tossed aside when she no longer fit into his narrative. As Gemma spoke, my mind flashed back to all the signs I had missed. The perfect facade he had put on for everyone around him. He was charming, always the life of the party, always saying the right thing. He had fooled everyone, including me. I wasn't the first, and I wouldn't be the last. Then it hit me. The real woman he needed was nothing more than a tool in his quest for validation. It wasn't about love or desire or even respect. It was about control. He wasn't looking for someone to share his life with. He was looking for someone who would inflate his ego, someone who would make him feel wanted and important. And once he had them, Once they had served their purpose, they were discarded without a second thought. The worst part? The real woman he was currently with, the one he thought was going to fix him or make him happy, was just another pawn in his game. He had already started working her into his narrative, telling her the same lies he had told me. She didn't know it yet, but she was walking down the same path I had been on. The one where you're made to believe you're the only one, only to find out you're just another name in a long list of broken hearts. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to feel angry, to scream at the injustice of it all. But another part of me was strangely relieved. I wasn't the problem. I wasn't the one who had failed this relationship. He was the one who couldn't see beyond his own ego, the one who had ruined everything he touched. But as I sat there reflecting, I realized something even more painful. The cheating wasn't even the biggest betrayal. The real betrayal was the manipulation. He had spent so much time creating this perfect, loving image of himself, only to tear it all down the second someone else came along. This wasn't about me at all. It was about him. His need for validation, his need for control. He had played the perfect boyfriend until he didn't need me anymore. And then he discarded me like I was nothing. I thought about all the friends who had sided with him. Chloe, Jacob, everyone who believed his lies. They didn't know the truth. They had all been duped, just like I had. I didn't know if I could ever look at them the same way again. They weren't just naive, they were complicit. They had seen his manipulation firsthand and still chose to support him, to ignore the red flags. It was hard to swallow, knowing how many people had been influenced by his lies, how many people had been led down a path of destruction by him. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. It wasn't just from him, it was from everyone who had chosen to believe him over me. As I sat there, all I could think was, how far will this go? How much longer can he keep pretending? I wasn't going to let him get away with it. But part of me felt a strange sense of calm, knowing that it was only a matter of time before everything started to unravel. The truth always comes out. It always does. And when it does, he won't be able to hide anymore. I wasn't going to let him destroy my life. Not anymore. The suspense was killing me. I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew one thing for sure. This was far from over. And I was going to make sure I wasn't the only one left standing when the dust settled. Let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where your reputation was torn down unfairly? How did you handle it? What did you do to make sure the truth came out? Let me know in the comments below. After everything that had happened, I realized I had to take back control. I was tired of feeling like I was being dragged around by someone else's lies, their manipulation. It was time to stop being a passive participant in my own life. I knew I couldn't stay in that apartment with him anymore. So, I did the hardest thing. I packed my bags, changed my phone number, and walked away. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was realizing that I was stronger than I had ever given myself credit for. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally putting myself first. I didn't have to keep holding on to the wreckage of that relationship. I didn't have to keep explaining myself to anyone. It wasn't easy. The nights were the hardest, when I felt like giving up. I cried more than I thought I ever would, asking myself why it all had to happen this way. But deep down, I knew I couldn't let this defeat me. I had to push through. There were small victories every day. I signed a new lease on an apartment that was mine, no shared space with the person who had shattered my heart. I started taking care of myself, physically and mentally. I even started taking walks in the evenings, just to clear my head. I realized that the more I stepped away from the past, the more my future started to unfold. The moment I decided to take back control, it felt like a weight was lifted. Slowly, I began to rebuild. One step at a time, I was starting to feel like myself again. And then, the plot twist. I had no idea what was coming next. I thought the worst was behind me, but when I got a mysterious email from someone I didn't recognize, my stomach dropped. It wasn't spam. It wasn't junk. It was a message from someone who knew my ex far better than I did. I think you need to know about something. Your ex is playing a game, and you're not the first person he's done this to. He's been doing this for years. Attached to the message were documents, pictures, and screenshots. It was everything. The lies, the manipulation, the evidence of how he'd done this to multiple women before me. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a manipulator. He'd been pulling the same tricks on others, stringing people along, using them, and tossing them aside when they no longer suited his needs. This wasn't just about me, it was about a pattern of deceit. And suddenly, it all made sense. I wasn't the first, and I wouldn't be the last. He had built this web of lies, trapping anyone who got close enough to him. But now, the truth was coming to light. The more I dug, the more victims I found, and the clearer it became that I wasn't the only one he had hurt. It was time to stop letting him control the narrative. I wasn't going to be another woman he discarded without consequence. So, I did something that felt like the final blow. I took everything I had learned and posted it on social media. I posted screenshots, texts, and the lies he had told. I exposed the truth. There was no turning back. And as soon as I hit post, I could feel the world shifting. His manipulations were starting to backfire. The friends who had chosen him over me, people who never questioned the things he'd said about me, were now questioning their loyalty. They started realizing that they had been part of his game too. The people who had once been quick to judge me were now reaching out, asking for the full story. They were seeing his lies for what they really were. The reaction was wild. The texts, the comments, the messages, they all came flooding in. People were shocked, angry, and apologizing for believing his lies. Some of my friends felt guilty for not standing by me. But there was nothing more satisfying than knowing that the truth was finally out. And then, just when I thought everything had calmed down, I received a message from an unexpected person. My ex's new girlfriend, let's call her Emma, reached out to me. She had no idea what kind of person he really was, and she was angry. She had been manipulated just like I had. She hadn't known about the lies, the deceit. But now she did, and she was ready to confront him. I didn't know how things would go from here. But I knew this was the beginning of something new. Something real. And with each step, I felt more and more in control. It was time for the final showdown. There was a big event coming up, a friend's wedding, and I knew he'd be there. I wasn't sure if I was ready for it, but deep down, I knew I had to be. I couldn't let him keep controlling my life, my peace. So, I showed up. I walked into that room with my head held high, knowing the truth would set me free. The tension was thick in the air as soon as I stepped in. I could feel his eyes on me, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't afraid anymore. And then, it happened. He saw me, and his face turned pale. The shock was obvious. His world, the one he'd so carefully constructed, was crumbling. He didn't say a word, but I could see the panic in his eyes. He knew he was caught. The crowd started whispering, and as I watched him, I realized something. I had already won. It wasn't about making him pay. It wasn't about revenge. It was about taking back my life. I had learned to let go of the anger, the frustration, the hurt. I didn't need him to suffer to find peace. I had found peace on my own. And that's when it all clicked for me. As for him, he had no one left to control, no one left to manipulate. The lies had unraveled, and all that was left was the truth. The truth had set me free, and now I was in control of my own future. When the dust settled, I realized that everything had happened for a reason. I had learned the hardest lessons of my life, and now, I was free. I had to let go of the past in order to move forward. Now, my life is different. I've rebuilt. I found new friends, a new sense of purpose, and maybe even a new chance at love. But most importantly, I found myself again. I'm no longer defined by the betrayal or the manipulation. I'm free, and nothing can take that away from me. The past is behind me, and I'm walking towards a brighter future. And if you're going through something like this, remember, you are stronger than you know. You can get through this. Trust yourself. So, if you've ever had to expose someone's lies, or if you fought to reclaim your peace, I want to hear your story. Drop a comment below, and let's keep this conversation going. Don't let anyone take away your power. Stay strong.